What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Hot Singles, where I talk about this week's biggest new issues. Stay tuned for my thoughts on all of this week's most exciting new comics. Alright, so yeah, another episode of Hot Singles, and this was an interesting week. There wasn't a ton of new content that I was reading this week compared to a lot of the other bigger weeks, but about half of those issues were ones that I wanted to talk about. There was a lot of good issues that came out this week. So with that, I'm going to be doing two different videos. One of them is going to be for everything, and then one video is going to be for the actual physically biggest book that came out this week, the big anniversary issue of Detective Comics, issue 1027. So if you're interested in that, I will have that as a separate video that should be going up on my YouTube around the same time as this one, but all the other issues from this week will be here. So first off, starting with DC, we had the new issue of Justice League, which was the first part of Josh Williamson's Doom Metal tie-in to Death Metal. And this was a decent little kind of expositionary issue to Doom Metal, giving us the plot line here. Basically, we see Dick Grayson, Nightwing, is bringing together a group of different heroes to try and rescue the Legion of Doom, which are being held captive by Perpetua and used to power her throne. So they want to free the Legion of Doom because basically if they do so, then they can take away a lot of power from Perpetua. I guarantee that what's going to wind up happening is this will be a decent little storyline because this was a good first issue, and it's Josh Williamson. He's been doing a lot of great work over at DC, but I guarantee what's going to happen is that this story is going to be one of those things that just happens in the background and you don't necessarily need it to read the event. And in one of the latter issues of Death Metal, we're going to see a little note on there where, you know, they say something about, oh, Perpetua's power is lower, what happened? And then Nightwing will come up and be like, we rescued the Legion of Doom and the Legion of Doom will be with him. Something like that will happen, and there will be a note that says, to read this story, check out Doom Metal in the pages of Justice League issue whatever to whatever. So it's going to be one of those things, like I said, you don't have to read it, but it's going to probably be an entertaining enough story that it will be worthwhile reading, but if you don't care to, you can just read the main stuff anyway. Also from DC this week was the Zero issue for Milestone Returns. Over at the DC Fandom, they did announce that they were going to be having the return of the Milestone universe in the comics, and this is something that they've been working on for quite a while over at DC. They've been wanting to bring Milestone back. If you're not familiar with Milestone, that was the imprint of the publisher that had stuff like Icon and Zombie, and most notably, of course, Static Shock. Now, Static Shock is most well known because he was the one that got the really well done, really well loved animated series, and a lot of people around my age watched that on Saturday mornings when we were growing up, and I loved that series. So seeing that they were going to be doing a resurrection of the Milestone universe was really exciting to me because I'm excited to see new content coming out from that universe, which I think is going to be very timely coming out right now. But also because I'm hoping that they put up a bunch of new collected editions about Milestone characters, or regarding the Milestone characters, because there's a couple of collections out there but not a lot, so it'd be cool to see a bunch of those classic Static collections, the classic Icon series and stuff like that. So this was a decent little one-shot. It gave just a quick look at, you know, Icon and a quick look at Static and kind of how these characters are being updated for the current times. And then there was a quick short, I believe, that was supposed to be connected to the character Zombie, that was written, I believe, it was a couple pages written by Greg Pak. So it looks like maybe if they go forward and they do a Zombie series that they'll have Pak come in, which makes sense because he's a Korean creator and the character is Korean himself, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm excited. This is supposed to happen in just a few months out. It's going to be February of 2021. We should be getting some news coming soon about what creators are going to be involved. I think they already announced one title and a graphic novel that are going to be involved with this, but hopefully there's going to be more stuff that gets announced as we go forward. And then that is it for DC, the only other issue being the Detective Comics issue. I'm looking at my notes, so that's why I'm looking off to the side. But like I said, I'm going to be talking about the Detective Comics issue in a separate video, because otherwise it's going to take me an extra 10 to 15 minutes, because there's a lot to digest from that. I had one issue from Image, and it was a new comic from Chip Zdarsky that I had no idea was even coming out, called Stillwater. So the series is kind of a Twilight Zone-esque kind of horror type story. So it's something completely different from what we've gotten from Zdarsky in the past, but I'm a huge fan of his, and so I was definitely going to be reading it as soon as I found out that he was the one writing it. And it was a really great first issue. I really enjoyed this. Basically, the story follows a guy who gets fired from his job. He goes out for a night of drinking. He gets into a bar fight. He gets beat up, knocked out. He gets taken home by his friend. And when he wakes up in the morning with a bruised face, he gets a knock on the door, and it's someone delivering a letter to him that states that his great-great-aunt or someone like that, who he's never met before, has died, and he has to go to this town called Stillwater to get his inheritance. So he doesn't know if it's a hoax, if it's a joke or anything, so he grabs his friend and they go out to Stillwater, and some weird things start to happen. I don't want to go into more about the depth of the actual storyline here, but it is a really fun first issue. If you like Twilight Zone, if you like those types of stories, I highly recommend it. And if you like Chip Zdarsky, you know exactly the quality of storytelling you're going to get here. This was a surprise and definitely a highlight for the week. I also had one issue from Dark Horse this week, and it was another surprise. I had no idea this was coming out, but there is a new miniseries set in the universe of the Umbrella Academy comics. It's written by Gerard Way along with Sean Simon. Sean Simon joined Gerard Way over on the comic he did based on the True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys album of My Chemical Romance. This focuses directly on Klaus. The miniseries is titled You Look Like Death, and it's focused on Seance, Klaus of the Umbrella Academy, who, growing up, back when the first miniseries came out, was immediately one of my favorite characters in this series. I thought he was funny, he's irreverent, he was just really intriguing of a character. And so now we get a miniseries, a 6-issue miniseries that's supposed to be following his character. And so far, so good. This is a great first issue. It takes place before the events of that first miniseries, so if you're a fan of Umbrella Academy, this is something that you might want to check out. You get a little bit more backstory on the character, and it looks like it's going to lead towards a fun little story dealing with Klaus. I have no idea what to say about the ongoing story at this point because we've only kind of scratched the surface of it, but I'm definitely going to be checking this out, and like I said, if you're a fan of Umbrella Academy, definitely check this miniseries out. Now, we had several books over at Marvel, a couple of quick ones. There was a one-shot from Amazing Spider-Man that focused on Norman Osborn. It's leading into the 850th issue of Amazing Spider-Man, which comes out around the corner from here, and kind of detailed the relationship between the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Of course, Green Goblin is his biggest antagonist, and this kind of dealt a lot with their relationship. It was a fun little issue that's leading towards the climax of what's been the best arc of Spencer's Spider-Man run so far, and Spencer's run has been kind of up and down so far, so it's nice to see him get an arc that's been so good as this one has been, dealing with the Sin Eater and all that. So I'm looking forward to reading the new issue that's coming out and seeing where this storyline leads, and hopefully Spencer can continue to catch the same steam that he's had in this arc through the rest of his run on Amazing Spider-Man. There was also an issue of Thor that was really good. It's the first of a 2-part story arc that kind of leads into a new, different direction, focusing on what it means to be worthy of carrying Mjolnir and what it means to not be worthy as well. So I know that obviously Jason Aaron did a lot dealing with the worthiness aspect of Mjolnir and had Thor go without the hammer for a long time as it left Odinson and went over to Jane Foster. I don't know that that's what's going to be happening here. I don't think that he's going to be losing the hammer per se, but it does look like it's going to be leading towards some interesting things, and I'm intrigued to see where this short story arc leads us in Donny Cates' ongoing Thor run. It leaves us with a pretty fun little cliffhanger, and I'm unsure whether that cliffhanger is going to lead towards something bigger, if it's going to lead towards more permanent change for the franchise and for the character, or if it's just going to be something fun and temporary that leads into the next big thing that Cates has planned for Thor. So I guess we'll have to tune in and find out what happens in the next issue. We also got a new issue of X-Men this week that was kind of the lead in towards the X of Swords or 10 of Swords event that's around the corner, and it did kind of give a lot of exposition towards that event. So if you're looking forward to that event, then definitely read this because it's going to give you a lot of information about the characters that are going to be involved and kind of the background about the stuff that was involved in there. But the most important thing about this issue is that According to artist Lionel Francis Yu, this is going to be his final interior comic art. So if you're a fan of his, definitely check out this issue. He did say he's going to continue doing cover work in the future, but just not interiors. Now, I don't want to say that this is definitely his last work on interiors in comics, because we've seen a lot of different artists in the past say the same thing, that they're retiring, they're no longer doing art, and then they come back and do a special issue here or there. So we'll see what happens, but if you're a fan of Yu, this is definitely an issue to check out. This was a pretty solid issue altogether, and like I said, if you're looking forward to the event, definitely check this out. I feel like if you know Hickman's style of writing and you followed him through his previous stuff, this seems like X of Swords is kind of going to be like Infinity was for his Avengers run, where he had a lot of exposition in the first year or so of the Avengers title, and it led towards this big event with Infinity, and then Infinity led towards the latter half that led towards the big climax. So I don't know if it's going to be the same pattern and this is going to lead towards the climax of his run and stuff. Maybe he'll have another smaller event in between, but I will say that this event is probably going to lead towards some big revelations about what's been going on during Hickman's run and why things seem to be a little bit weird for the X-Men. I've been really enjoying it, and I'm really looking forward to this. Speaking of X-Men, we got a Marvel's Snapshot X-Men issue this week, written by Jay from the Jay and Miles podcast. Now, if you're not familiar, the Marvel Snapshot issues are one-shots that take place in the Marvel's universe, the miniseries written by Kurt Busiek with art by Alex Ross. Each one of these miniseries focuses on a different character and tells a little bit of narrative, whatever they decide to focus on. This one focuses on Cyclops and his past, him growing up before joining the X-Men, before being, even knowing that he's a mutant. And it was a really good issue, and I was really happy that it wound up being good, because I was worried that given that the writer is a podcaster, while he might know a lot about the X-Men, that doesn't always mean that they are good with writing a narrative story and writing something, especially with sequential storytelling. But he does a fantastic job here in giving us this look at a younger Cyclops that kind of informs his transformation from a young boy into wanting to be the hero and the leader that we know him as now. I really recommend this issue if you're a fan of the X-Men. Even if you haven't read a single other issue from the Marvel's Snapshots line or Marvel's itself, this is a great issue to check out. Highly recommended. Great storytelling and great artwork in here. And one more X-Men issue. A lot of X stuff happening this week. Giant Size X-Men Storm came out, and I was a big fan of the issue that preceded this, the Giant Size X-Men Phantom X issue. That was a fantastic issue that dealt with some of my favorite characters and concepts from the X-Men franchise, and I was really anticipating this issue because it's following up directly on that. And it was a fine issue, and it did do what it was supposed to do, but it wasn't nearly as exciting as the one that preceded it. It does wrap up this storyline and give us some context on stuff that was happening with Storm, but I was hoping for a little bit more from Phantom X, more from the world and Ultimatum and stuff like that, especially after everything that was shown in that Phantom X issue. Unfortunately, it didn't give us that much, but it leaves us with a couple of little ideas of possible cliffhangers that could come back later on, and knowing Hickman, I'm sure that he's going to revisit this stuff later on. It's just a matter of where and when. So, not the best issue, not as good as the previous one, but I'll be excited to see what he does in the future. And the final issue from Marvel, and probably the biggest issue from Marvel this week, and one that I was really excited about, is Iron Man #1 by Christopher Cantwell and art by Cafu. Now, Cantwell's been doing a great job over on his Doctor Doom series at Marvel, so I was expecting him to do a great job on this as well, but I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't look a lot into the preview art or what the story was going to be, but I knew that he mentioned he's trying to kind of take a step back with Tony Stark, and that's precisely what he did in this issue. In this comic, we see Tony decide that he wants to stop trying to advance himself and to advance his own technology, and he wants to kind of revisit the days of old, where he was just a man in a metal suit. And it winds up being a really interesting little narrative, because you're kind of stepping away from Tony the futurist and going more into Tony the human and Tony the hero. And I'm really enjoying this look at Tony Stark. Another point about this that was really interesting is that we look at Tony as a public persona. Iron Man's identity is publicly known, and if that was something that was in the real world, if there was a hero going around that was creating technology that was falling into the wrong hands so often, there are going to be people that are detractors who are constantly saying things against Tony, talking about how the technology he created is being used for bad, how the fights he get in lead towards a lot of collateral damage and lives lost. And that's exactly what we get here, and it leads towards a really interesting narrative and a good look at Tony as a character and into his head as a man and not just as this brilliant scientist. And I really enjoy the direction that this series looks like it's going to be taken into. It looks like he's more focused on going back to being a man in an iron suit fighting street level crime. I can't wait to see where this series goes. There is amazing artwork. Cantwell told a great story in this first issue. There's an interesting little cliffhanger with a fun new villain that looks like they're introducing. And I'm excited to see what happens from here. It's nice to kind of take a step back with this character, where the past several runs have seemed like every single writer is just trying to one-up the last writer by doing bigger, more innovative technology that Tony is dealing with. And then finally we get someone who's like, you know what? I'm just going to make him put the gloves on like normal now and have him have the armor in a suitcase like he used to. And this is fun. This is really fun. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where this series goes. That's it for this week's Hot Singles. Like I said, there's going to be another episode that's going to be talking about Detective Comics in particular, because that is a huge issue, 150 pages. It's basically a graphic novel. So I'm going to have that up as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for clicking the video and checking this out. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. I do multiple videos every single week talking about comics and manga and all kinds of stuff, so if that intrigues you, I hope you'll subscribe and hit that bell. As well, big shout out to my Patreon subscribers. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and supporting me. If you like what I do here and would like to support me as well, there is a link down below to my Patreon. You can check that out and support me if you'd like. And then a big shout out to the Omnibus Collectors Network, the channel that I do work on every single Thursday, where I join awesome YouTubers to talk about comics and manga and all kinds of other stuff. If you enjoy what I do on this channel, definitely check out the Omnibus Collectors Network. Once again, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.